Hello, my name is Shalni Arora. I am CEO of Savannah Wisdom and a trustee of the British Asia Trust. I would like to introduce Vidya Shah, CEO of the Edelgive Foundation. Welcome, Vidya.
Thank you.
Please tell us something about yourself and the work of the foundation.
Edelgive is an Indian foundation started nearly 10 years ago. And the idea behind setting up the foundation was to be able to work with small and medium-sized NGOs, but work not only in terms of funding them, but also in terms of helping build their capacity to grow and become sustainable. That was one of the biggest challenges that we saw, especially in the Indian development sector.
Do you see philanthropy taking a new direction in India?
I think there's been huge changes that I have personally witnessed since setting up the foundation. 10 years ago, we were the only corporate foundation that was modeled in the way we set it up. Since then, I think there have been two very interesting developments. One has been that there is a mandate now for all companies to provide 2% of their non-profits towards CSR, and that has effectively opened nearly $2 billion a year that can come into the sector for philanthropy. The second thing is, as we all know, the number of rich entrepreneurs that have now grown in India over the last, especially since liberalization 25 years ago, has created a new breed of philanthropists who are a lot more involved. They are a lot more wanting to do things differently, both at scale as well as in terms of creativity and innovation. And given largely these two developments, I believe that the amount of homegrown Indian philanthropy that we'll see over the next decade or so will quite radically change the way the development sector works in India.
And what sort of causes are the corporate sector and the philanthropists in India funding?
I think the most popular sector continues to be education. And there's a lot of innovation we've seen both at the government level as well as at the civil society level in education, and that makes it very attractive to philanthropists. I would estimate that about under 50%, but close to 45% would be the money going into education. But I think the other popular sectors are health, because the primary health sector is quite broken currently in India. And then there's a lot of work going on around skilling and youth. I think these tend to be very popular sectors.
Can you give us an example of some of the innovation around education, perhaps some of the organizations that you have funded?
I think there's the original sort of focus of a lot of philanthropists was around replicating infrastructure, and the first 5 to 10 years when Indian philanthropists started becoming actively involved, there were a lot more schools getting built, till people realized that it was really duplication of resources, and the government infrastructure around schools was pretty good. That was the point I think a lot of innovation began, where people started looking at learning outcomes rather than infrastructure. And in terms of learning outcomes, they started focusing both at the leadership level of schools, so working around principals, but more importantly working with teachers and building their capacity to be more effective in classrooms. So there was a lot of work that then went on to, and a lot of copying in a sense of models both in the UK, in the US, Finland, things like that, and replicating a lot of that in India. So a lot of work around pedagogy and delivery in classrooms. And then now the latest kind of over the last 5 years, what's really become popular is EdTech. So really using technology to figure out how delivery of education can be improved, learning outcomes can be measured, and children and teachers can get more agency in terms of determining how and what they want to learn. So I think that's been really fascinating.
That sounds fascinating. And that kind of experience comes from actually being on the ground and understanding the issues. So as a UK-based philanthropist, how can we educate ourselves to move our philanthropy into that direction?
I always think that a lot of creativity has actually happened in India, generally in the philanthropic sector. I also work very closely with the Asian Venture Philanthropy Network, and when we look at even models of philanthropy in other parts of Asia, which are as needy in a sense as we are, I find that there's been an incredible amount of creativity around the models, around execution, and it's led to a lot of very interesting players that have come from both people from the corporate sector, people from both Indian and foreign philanthropy, as well as people from government who are increasingly interested in what can move the needle. So I think from a UK perspective, I would presume that I presume that you mean about challenges in UK around education, or would it be from the point of view of philanthropists interested in...
Philanthropists based in the UK interested in India.
Yeah. I think a lot of it would really emerge from, and there's a lot of literature out there. There are a lot of good models that are out there. There are a lot of good foundations and agencies that are working around making these models available. Some of them we can see even in terms of fundraising here in the UK, like Pratham is here both in the UK as well as in the US. They've gone out and really evangelized the way they've, especially around measurement and early childhood education, the work that they've done. So I think there's a lot more that is now available in terms of models, in terms of literature, and that can be seeded in a sense here as well. And obviously the British Asian Trust has been working in India for the last 10 years, I think.
Yes.
We've known them for pretty long as well, worked very early on in partnering with them in identifying good nonprofits that we could co-fund together. And the trust, because I know them so well, also has been focused on looking at unusual models, not the large, well-funded ones, but the ones who are doing good grassroots work and that have alternate models as well.
That's very true. And I completely understand what you say about the challenges here in the UK education system. And I think any UK-based philanthropist can take learning from here and apply the same models in India as well. It isn't another issue in another country. The issues are exactly the same, and they transpose very easily between the two. Ourselves, Savannah Wisdom, we have been working with Edelgive Foundation around supporting NGOs that work in the legal sector. We believe that the new direction of philanthropy is disruptive philanthropy, similar to what you're saying, where we challenge the system a bit and we look for ways to change the system. How can we bring other philanthropists on that journey to really think creatively and innovatively about their giving?
I think a lot of it starts with, actually taking the first step in terms of exploring what's available in a sector and in a country. So I think you've been one of the real role models around that, because you've been open to learning and experimenting and actually taking risks with fairly unusual organizations. I know the organizations you support. I know that they do what I call very edgy work. It's not only difficult work, but it's also not easy to measure. And a lot of foundations and philanthropists are very preoccupied with very tangible measurement, and therefore the openness to being able to work in areas which are absolutely necessary but may yield progress over 8, 10, 15 years. I think that openness is very, very important. And then convening around areas of mutual interest. Something like what we're trying to do today, or what we do in India around At the Same Table, where we convene philanthropists to come and really talk about things that bother us, that don't really work very well for us, or that we don't understand, that we have some difficulty around putting our hands around. So I think that is also very important. Talking.
Yes, absolutely. So on a more personal note, Vidya, what motivates you?
I don't come from the philanthropic sector. When I started out, I really didn't even know what development really was. I was an investment banker. I was running, finance in a financial services company, and I think what really changed my vision, in a sense, was when I started visiting and looking at some of the nonprofits we'd supported. Because I was really doing part of our charity allocation as CFO. And I think that just meeting these very unusual people with extremely different levels of motivation and passion was what it keeps me motivated as well.
Yes. Thank you very much for your time, Vidya, and thank you for your inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.